Well, time now for a look through today's newspapers, and for that I'm joined once again in the studio by Alison Sargent. Hi, Alison.
Hey, Axie.
We're starting here in Europe once again, where papers in the UK are very happy with how the UK vaccine rollout is going.
That's right, Hexie. You could even say that they're sort of bragging about their record, the record number of people they've been vaccinating. You can see an exact number. This was the total tally for Saturday on the front page of Metro News. 844,285 people jabbed in one day. It was the third record-breaking vaccination day in a row and means half of all adults in the UK now have at least some protection. You also see, though, at the bottom of the page that Metro News is one of several papers that's sort of rubbing this in the face of the EU, and in particular EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. They write, "Now that will needle Ursula." Now, the European Union could end up having the last laugh, though, because the bloc will be meeting on Thursday to discuss halting vaccine exports, including those to the UK. The Guardian reports that if the EU decides to follow through on the export ban, well, it would delay the UK's vaccination program by 2 months. That would really derail the UK government's plans to reopen by the summertime. Meanwhile, this analysis also shows that an export ban would only speed up the EU's vaccination program by just over a week. So basically, according to this study, it wouldn't really be worth it for the EU, although we should point out that this study, of course, is being published in a big UK newspaper.
Yeah, worth mentioning. It's also worth mentioning that, of course, in this whole context of discussions of vaccines, Israel has done extraordinarily well, a world leader in vaccine rollouts, and that could be very good news for Benjamin Netanyahu ahead of Tuesday's elections.
That's right, Hexie. According to left-wing paper Haaretz, vaccines could get Netanyahu re-elected, even if, according to the paper, he failed to manage the pandemic. The paper reminds us of Netanyahu's many failures along the way, lack of airport controls, Haaretz says, and also surrendering to Israel's ultra-Orthodox community when they didn't comply with social distancing. Haaretz writes, if Netanyahu, if his Likud party ends up winning Tuesday's election, well, he is going to be remembered as Israel's luckiest politician ever. Meanwhile, in another Israeli paper, the Jerusalem Post, we read some vaccine news that is good news for all of us. An Israeli-American company called Oramed is developing a coronavirus vaccine in pill form. Now, an oral vaccine has obvious advantages. People would be able to take it in their homes without a doctor. The Jerusalem Post writes that it could be shipped around the world in refrigerated boxes and stored at room temperature. The one downside, though, is that this isn't going to be happening quite yet. The company is just now launching their phase 1 human trials, and they hope to have data from those first trials within the next 3 months.
Great news for anyone who's needle shy, I'm sure. Here in France, meanwhile, papers have got a lot of criticism for new anti-COVID rules that have come into force in the wider Paris region, haven't they?
That's right, Hexie. According to Le Monde, these new rules are just making people more uneasy. Rather than bringing them relief, they've really shaken people's confidence in the government here in France. Le Monde explains that there was confusion, in particular over the new attestation forms for leaving the house. The government changed their mind at the last minute and decided they would only be required after curfew hours, and that was after there was outcry over these forms being too long. They were 2 pages and very confusing. In today's front page cartoon from L'Opinion, we see the Marianne, who's the figure that represents the French Republic. She's puzzling there over one of these rules that go all the way down to her feet, very long. She's wondering if the government maybe deserves to be considered among the list of essential services. The paper's headline here reads, "The third lockdown, why make it easy?"
Absolutely. Well, some papers here in France are actually taking a break from coronavirus news, focusing instead on some culture wars that are playing out in French universities.
That's right. Hexie Lacroix writes that the French academic sphere is being ripped in half over questions of race and gender. The paper cites recent incidents like a conference at the university in Bordeaux that was canceled after protests by feminist groups. There was also a controversy at Sciences Po Grenoble after some professors were accused of Islamophobia. xenophobia. Now, Lacroix explains that critics see post-colonial and gender studies as part of an ideology that goes against France's universalist values. Meanwhile, right-wing paper Le Figaro is focusing in particular on one of France's biggest left-wing student unions, the UNEF. The paper criticizes the fact that it now has some meetings that are reserved only for students of color, something that's actually not uncommon for clubs in the United States to create sort of a comfortable space for minority students. Here in France, though, and particularly for right-wing Le Figaro, this is inconceivable. The paper writes in its editorial that, quote, "The race war has replaced the class war."
All right, Alison Sargent with a look through the day's top stories. Thank you very much indeed.